just got off of this panel where you're talking about the changing media landscape. My first question for you is, do you ever sleep? Because I feel like every time I'm online, I see you posting. How do you do it?
I get like 5 hours a night usually. Even coming in here yesterday on the plane, I took a couple hours to read a book on the plane. I didn't log on to the Wi-Fi. And then finally, as we started descending, I was like, well, let me see what's going on. And I had a million messages like, you're going to live tweet the Trump press conference, aren't you? Which I didn't even know was happening. So that part of it can be kind of challenging, that it is kind of a 24/7 job. But I'm grateful to be able to do what I do for a living. I mean, I get that a lot from people, kind of like, how can you withstand this? And it has been a long decade. I had hair when I started doing this a decade ago. But there's worse ways to make a living than covering politics. And so I'm grateful to be here. And it was fun being on the panel.
Yeah, so you are an independent journalist. And I think a lot of people, you use the word independent, they're searching for objective news sources, like we've talked about. Sophia just made the distinction between opinion columnists versus journalists and how people struggle to draw that distinction. What advice would you have if somebody is in the audience saying, the media landscape is so overwhelming to me, where do I go to find factual information?
Yeah, so, I mean, I understand what my audience is, and I'm not an objective news source in the sense that I'm not trying to necessarily present both sides. I try to present what I think is true. And so what I do is I mainly cover the right for a left audience, or like a center to left audience. So where I would start with people who are kind of looking for more, factual news or credible information is, I think you can't go wrong with like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, even like CNN, for kind of like the basic grist of the news, what's going on in the world, and then you can get your commentary from there. But that is a challenging thing that, I'll acknowledge with the rise of independent media, is that there's a lot of commentary, but there isn't necessarily a lot of reporting all the time. So I do think, we have to be kind of honest and transparent that we still do need some of these institutional outlets to provide the in-depth reporting that we need to do the commentary. But, I think for someone like myself, I always try to be very cognizant of my audience, who they are and what they want. And so I understand after a decade of doing this that my role is basically to cover the right wing for the center and the left, and watch the Trump press conferences, watch congressional hearings, watch all the events that people themselves don't have time or the bandwidth to watch, and then kind of present them with highlights, and then provide commentary in the newsletter that hopefully helps them better understand what's going on in the world.
So is this your first Principles First conference?
It is, yep.
What did you think, and how was the energy in the room? How would you describe it?
It's been amazing. It's been a couple years since I've done a conference like this, and the great thing is that you meet so many people that you only know from social media. Like, you see their avatar, but then you meet them in person, and so you make connections that way that can last, and you stay in touch with people and hopefully see them at conferences down the line. So, also this facility is amazing. It's just gorgeous walking around at night here, and the Gaylord, some of the bars and restaurants that are downstairs, and just kind of the setting for it has been pretty spectacular. From my room up on the 8th floor, there's a view of the Washington Monument, which is great. So I'm really grateful to be invited, and I've met so many people that I only knew digitally, and so that to me is always one of the biggest values of coming to a place like this.
All right. Well, again, our theme for this conference is America 250. We want to try to end on a high note. What gives you hope for the future, and how the media can play a role in that hope?
Well, I think that, one of the things that came up in our panel, and I heard Sophia mention this as well, is kind of the value of local news. And one of the cool things that I think gets kind of lost in some of these conversations is that because we have social media and we're so interconnected, that you can be exposed to sources that you might not ever have exposure to, like 10, 15 years ago, where, like, even in Minneapolis where I live, a lot of the people on the ground who are doing reporting about the ICE occupation, I saw national people retweeting them, and that's kind of gratifying to see that if you're doing good work, it can get out there for a broad audience, and you're not necessarily just confined to the national papers, and you can read the New York Times over the country, but you couldn't get the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Well, now, because of social media, everybody can read that. So there is a lot of really, really good journalism happening, and I think we see that a lot on Substack, other independent platforms. And there's more access to it than ever. So those are cool things, and I think the challenge is just sifting through the noise and finding that good reporting, basically doing the mining to get the nuggets of gold. But to the extent that people are able to do that, and I think a lot of people are discerning enough to do that, that's a really cool thing about even this fractured landscape that we have, which creates a lot of problems. There's a lot of great reporting, and there's more accessibility to it than ever before.
All right. Aaron, thanks for being part of Principles First.
Thanks. Appreciate it.